Okay, we'd like to welcome everybody to our Voices of the Community. The chair will entertain a motion to suspend the agenda so that we can do our live broadcast of our special guest.
So move, Mr. President.
There's
Second, Mr. President.
It's been moved and seconded. We thank you to the membership. Joining us this morning is the new Chief Executive Officer of the Hartford Land Bank, Mr. Arunan. Now, I'm going to absolutely mess up your last name, Arunan.
It's Arulampalam, but thank you, Mr. President. And I'll say I feel honored to be on the inaugural episode of this show. I wish you the best of success.
Well, it is good to have you on board here, and we look forward to our conversation with you, as well as questions that the membership may have. And if there's anybody that's watching in the general public that has a question, we will make an exception and hear from non-members if you put your questions or comments in the chat section of whatever social media that you are watching us on. Mr. Arunan, welcome. And first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm a Hartford resident. I live with my wife and our small kids in sort of the border of Frog Hollow and Berry Square in the South End. I came from the state. I just started at the Land Bank this week, actually. Monday was my first day. But until then, I was at the Department of Consumer Protection for a few years, and then at a law firm downtown, Updike, Kelly and Spellacy. But I'm also, a resident of a home that was vacant, had fallen into disrepair when we bought it, and have invested in my own home, but also understand the privilege of being able to purchase a home, build equity, build capital in my own home, and the disproportionate impact of, I'm surrounded by renters. We have a city with a home ownership rate of 24%. And so that means more than 3 out of every 4 people are not able to build equity in their homes. And I can see the impact of folks who are at the mercy of out-of-town landlords in the city. And so this seemed like a perfect opportunity for me to do something in my city, in my neighborhoods, in the neighborhoods I care about, that makes an impact that I can see day to day. And so I'm very excited to be at the Land Bank. Excited to kind of tell you guys some of the vision that we have for the Land Bank and where we'd like to see it go. But as I said, thank you for having me on.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here, and congratulations on your new position. So talk to us a little bit about what it is that the Land Bank does, why it's important to Hartford, and, what is the Land Bank?
Yeah, so the Land Bank, the idea is to identify and take vacant and blighted properties, instead of putting them up for massive auctions to just fall into the hands of another out-of-town landlord who uses it to milk rental income from our properties. The idea is to create a plan for each property to create sustainable use and a kind of future for that property going down the road. One of the things that we would like to take on in the time ahead here is to think about who is developing those properties and the hands in which those properties fall into, and how we can use the structure of the Land Bank to really build capital in Black and brown families here in the city of Hartford. And so, on the construction end, our goal is to create a pipeline to help funnel a pipeline of developers in this city who can gain capital by working on these land bank properties, who can kind of build out a development group and career, who can train Hartford youth in the construction trades by working on these properties. Because as we see development happen in our city, those are dollars that are going somewhere, and I would like to see those dollars come into Hartford residents. And then on the back end, to have these properties sold to homeowners in our city to really make an impact on home ownership in our city.
Okay. Um, I guess I only have one question, and then I'll open it up to for our members to ask questions if they would, and the members can indicate their desire to speak by raising their hand since we're doing this via Zoom. I guess I only have one question. If you could address like misconceptions of the land bank, and I'll give you what that one misconception is, because I've had conversations with some people, and that is that that the city is banking up land that they can give to people for the purposes of gentrification, and so maybe you could address that notion, if you will.
Yeah, and I think it's a fair misconception in that, I think that any development entity, there is initially there's a very fair level of, I don't want to say distrust, mistrust, but skepticism perhaps of development entities in the city, because very often the ownership in Hartford properties doesn't get cycled back into Hartford neighborhoods. So I will tell you, we hope to be really aggressive in getting these properties out of the land bank as they come into the hands of our primary interest is getting these into the hands of local developers, folks with skills in construction, folks who can partner with contractors in the city and gain capital on these properties. And very quickly, we'd like to cycle these into shovels in the ground and then full construction and ownership in our city. We have no interest in sitting on a bunch of properties, and we have no interest in having the ownership of these properties go to folks outside of our city. So it's not that we have anything against anybody outside of our city, but we would really like to see ownership. We'd really like to prioritize ownership by folks in Hartford of these properties, and capital creation by folks in Hartford through the process of renovating and rehabbing these properties.
Okay, my follow-up before I go to our first question would be, then the city doesn't benefit by having properties that they can't tax just sitting around, just growing grass in front of them. So I mean, it's necessary to get these things moving. We do have
it's costly too. The longer we hold on to these properties, the maintenance costs, the insurance costs, it takes away from our mission. And so the longer we hold on to these properties, the less value there is in that.
Okay. First question, Attorney Cynthia Jennings.
Good morning, Mr. Arunan. How are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Good to see
I have
you.
one. Good to see you too. Listen, I have a couple of questions, but I'll just make it one compound question. Is there any way that you plan to bundle these subdivisions down into perhaps individual properties so that local people and local contractors can pick them up and develop them? Number one, and that has to do with how you bundle them. And number two, financing. You have arrangements with financial institutions to make sure that some of our contractors, our local minority business enterprises, receive an opportunity to bid on these and flip them and sell them?
Yeah, the excellent questions. I will tell you, we haven't with the first few properties, and we don't have any plan to bundle them together. I'd like to look at these each as individual properties, and allow a chance for smaller scale contractors and potential developers in our city who don't have a bunch of cash to bring to the table to really gain capital on these properties. And so, I always say the difference between a very good contractor and a very good developer is access to capital. And we have a lot of great contractors in our city. And I would like to help create a pipeline of taking some of those contractors and turning them into developers who care about our city, who are invested in our city, who want to continue to go on. And frankly, if the land bank goes out of business at some point, if the land bank disappears, I would like to see the legacy of the land bank be 20, 30 Hartford-based developers who care about property in our city, who are willing to continue this work with or without a land bank. And so that's very, very important to me. And I have been on the job for 5 days, and so I don't have any sort of a system to tell you guys about or announce. But I will tell you, I'm aggressively meeting with, and if you have ideas of people I should reach out to, but I'm happy to take those. But aggressively trying to meet with financial institutions to figure out how we can ensure access to capital for Hartford-based potential developers to be able to develop these properties.
And thank you. And my last question and concern is, what are you going to do in order to screen out? I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm driving. What can you do to screen out the minority fronts that are, and the women-owned businesses that are actually owned by their husbands and are using this as an opportunity to gain capital?
That's a good question, and it's something I'm working through too. But I plan to be, involved with our developers face to face to get to know them. I would like to create some sort of a pipeline program that potential developers go through, and so we would like to build relationships with, instead of just signing off the property to people who through an arm's length transaction. We'd like to build relationships with developers in the city of Hartford and people who may not be developers yet, but may see an opportunity to gain capital through these properties in the city.
Okay. Next.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, Antonia Edwards.
Hey, good morning. I'm
Good morning.
I had a couple of questions, and Ms. Cynthia, she asked some of them. The first question is, how can we assure that minority contractors and developers are the people who which get the bids? Because I think that when you say that your Hartford developers, it seems to have always been, across the board. But there's a lot of minority, Black and brown people who have been basically forced out of the market. And I think that with this program, I think it would behoove the city in this program to focus on minority contractors. And I think that that's something that Mrs. Cynthia was trying to say, but I'm asking, is there a specific clause that can be put in there to regenerate and put more money into the community? So that was my first question.
Yeah, that's
yes?
a great question, and I'm sorry if I'm sorry if I missed that, Cynthia, in your question. We are not a governmental entity directly. We are a nonprofit, and governmental entities sometimes are limited in their ability to explicitly say we have a preference towards minorities working on these properties, or they can create caps, they can create sort of policy around it, but we can go out and say that if there is a qualified minority developer, and I'll, there's one distinction I just want to make briefly, but when we're talking about contractors and dealing with large scale developments, minority contracting, it's something that I know a lot of people here in this group have worked on, Colin and others, on how you get minorities to get these bids. The difference here is that we don't have to go to a large scale construction company and say, please hire these subs. These are properties that we can hand directly to minority contractors, minority developers, to take and run with. And if we can kind of help ensure that there's access to capital, if we can create enough of a subsidy to make it profitable and develop relationships with these minority contractors, I would like to, I guess I was making a distinction between contractors who might, from New York or elsewhere, who might, fit the description of a certain percent minority ownership, and Hartford-based minority contractors. But we certainly have a preference for Hartford-based minority contractors, developers, getting capital off of these properties by working on these properties, getting these properties, being able to flip them and sell them, hopefully to Hartford based owners who can occupy them.
My next question was, and I'm seeing this especially with COVID and the instability of housing and income and people not being able to afford the rents or being able to pay the rents, whatever. A lot of people are complaining in Hartford about gentrification, and Hartford is just going through that. I mean, I'm from Boston, like New York, Hartford, I mean, Harlem, all these other major cities have gone through it. I feel like there's a miscommunication from affordable housing to low income housing. So a lot of people think, oh, affordable housing going to build up Hartford, whatever, so on, but that locks out a certain percentage of people who are paying exorbitant amounts of money in rent, but can't really afford it according to the wages they receive or the income they receive. So my question to you is, if you're going to just focus on people who can afford affordable housing, that runs neck and neck with Defect Connecticut. Are there programs for people, for first-time home buyers, or programs are going to be put in place for people to be able to get that funding to do so? Because if not, then what's going to end up happening is that somebody's going to come in and buy these houses from out of state, whatever, and we're in the same situation again, because the people in the community aren't going to be able to afford them, especially with, the past year with COVID and the lack of income and also the low income. A lot of people can't afford astronomical rents like a major city, and that's what I'm hearing is the problem. So this program you have is excellent, but what do you have like hand in hand to secure financing for the residents?
Yeah, and that's a great question. That's the other piece of it that I'm also aggressively working on and trying to meet with both financial institutions who are willing to set aside enough capital for Hartford first-time homeowners in Hartford to purchase some of these properties. But also, I think it requires some level of subsidy, because the cost to build out these properties, if you add in that cost and the initial cost of the property, is often more than a middle-class homeowner in Hartford can afford. And so we've got to create subsidies, I think, to allow these properties to become affordable on the back end. And we've got to make the case to the state, and we've got to make it to large scale funders that if we can get people in Hartford to own Hartford properties, you're going to see a difference on every block. I think, if Hartford's homeownership rate went from 24% to double that, that in and of itself would be a massive redevelopment plan, because people will invest in their streets. People will invest in cutting their grass and cleaning up their trash. And, you drive around, you can tell who owns the property that they live in. And so I think we've got to make that case to the large scale funders, both from the state and the big foundations and corporations, that creating those subsidies to allow these homes to be affordable, bundling some of these programs that allows homeowners to purchase their properties, has a long-term sustainable impact on our city that is so valuable and so needed right now.
Thank you. Because I seen in Bridgeport, affordable housing is a minimum income of $68,000. Like in Boston, it's $100,000. And most people cannot afford, don't make that kind of money, like $68,000 for affordable housing as it's coded right now. So if we can work on getting that lower, because let's just say the average person makes $35,000, $40,000 just working one job, that affordable housing is not affordable to them, according to what they have on the market now.
Yeah. I appreciate that comment, and I agree.
Okay. Our next speaker is Sherry. Sherry, you have the floor.
Sherry, I think you're muted.
Okay. I have a question concerning is the program guidelines already in place, or do you have a board that you sit on, or a board that's a part of the organization that has something already in place and guidelines that you're following?
Yeah, thank you for that. We do have a board of directors. The full board is listed on our website, and we've just started to, before I came in, probably about 6 months before I came in, we got the first 7 properties from the city. This kind of larger scale vision for how you create, a pipeline with incentives for Hartford-based developers who haven't gotten into that space yet, but have the talents and skills to do it and just need the capital. That's something that I'm working through and trying to work towards, and hope to be able to walk down that road in the next few months. It's sort of a series of new programs that we would like to talk about within the land bank.
Okay, because I heard that you're a nonprofit. Okay, and so you're saying you already have the board in place. Okay, and you're setting up the guidelines, or you're formulating the guidelines, or you're implementing the guidelines that you already have.
Yeah, I mean, we have policies in place for acquisition and disbursement of properties. We have an agreement with the Department of Housing through a grant that they gave us a number of years ago, and we have a relationship with the city because we get the properties from the city, and so there are guidelines that govern each of those relationships. But we are still kind of working towards. Right now, we function very much as a traditional land bank, which serves a really important role of taking properties, kind of stabilizing them, creating a long-term plan, and getting them into someone's hands. And we certainly have encouraged. We've preferenced developers of color and developers who are local. The first 4 properties that are up for sale, and this was happened before I came on, all went to developers of color. But we'd like to be a lot more intentional in terms of being part of growing that pipeline, building that pipeline of folks who can be developers. And that's sort of a program, and the money that would require and is not yet in place, but I am aggressively working towards that.
Excellent.
All right.
I'm glad to hear that, because there's a number of companies that would be more than willing to donate money into programs like this. You just need to know how to solicit the funding, and I can help you in that area.
Thank you. I would love any help in that area, and also just sort of any advice from the group, because I know that encouraging minority contracting is an issue that the African American Alliance has taken up for a long time, and members of this group have taken up for decades. And so I know that obviously I'm not the first person to walk down this path, but I think there's a real opportunity with all the properties that we hope to come through from the city to take a step back and think about how we use these properties to build wealth in our city and in our people. So thank you for that, Sherry.
All right, I'm going to move on to our next question. Slight technical.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
When it's my turn, I like to ask a couple questions. Please.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
Not a problem. Since this is our inaugural program, we'll use this program to shake out a couple of technical things. And so I withdrew hosts, but I'm going to return them back to you. Because I'm trying to get the speaker view only, not the dual screen, and I don't know why I can't control that. So if my assistants in communications department can work on that when we go back. Alicia Jenkins. You have the floor, Alicia.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
I have a question in regards to sustainability. You say that you practice sustainable practices in regards to land development. What do you do in regards to that? Is it electric? Are you still using gas? Are you weeding out gas or whatnot? Like, what do you mean by sustainability in your development?
Yeah, thank you for that. And maybe I wasn't clear. I was speaking specifically to the sustainability of the housing intervention of spending money on rehabbing a house or a property. I think if you can get it into the hands of a Hartford landowner, there's a sustainability in the process of that house and in that property being maintained, being well kept, and ending up in the hands of somebody who lives in it and cares about it. So I was using sustainability in that sense. The environmental sustainability aspects of it are something that, I've had one conversation with the commissioner at DEEP about some of the programs that they have to retrofit properties to make them more environmentally sustainable and energy efficient. I did something that is, I will say, a little bit of a new topic to me. So if you have any expertise on that, I'd love to hear any thoughts about environmental sustainability in these properties. But it's something that I'm thinking through, but haven't. I'm still trying to figure out.
I'm kind of an environmentalist, so I can help you out.
Okay.
I wouldn't mind having a one-on-one with you after the meeting.
I would love that, and I will put my information in the chat so that everybody here has it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Attorney Jennings, followed by Alvin.
I just wanted to thank Sherry for bringing up the issue of the board and the organizational structure. Mr. Arunan, who appoints your board? Who's on the board? What kinds of people are on the board, and how large is the board?
Yeah, it's a good question. We have availability for up to 11 spots. Right now, there are 8 people on the board. Our executive team is comprised of Melvin Colon, who runs SINA, Steve Harris, who I'm sure many people here know, longtime resident of North Hartford and former council member, former firefighter, and Rex Fowler, who's at the Hartford Loan Fund, Community Loan Fund. And but we have 3, I believe 3 mayoral appointments on the board, and the rest is chosen by the board.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Alvin.
I just have a series of quick questions, and then I'll make a statement. So you use, first of all, who's going to purchase the home? Is it a contractor, or can a resident purchase the home and then seek to renovate? Which road are they both, or one of the two?
Either road is available now, and to be clear, right now we have a general RFP process. Anybody can put in a proposal. You have to give us a sense of what you would like to do with the property, what you think the costs of renovation will be, and who you would like to sell. Whether you would like to sell it to an owner occupant, whether you'd like to use it as an investment property. But right now we have an RFP process for that. We would like to work towards creating a more kind of formalized process of bringing in developers, and it could be just people who have an interest in development but don't have the construction skills. It could be a contractor who just doesn't have a large enough chunk of money to go out and buy properties themselves, but maybe with assistance from financial institutions can become a developer over time. And so right now we're open on that question to who can be developing these properties, but we'd like to create a specific kind of pipeline.
Okay, you seem to use developer and contractor interchangeably. That's your prerogative, but they're interchangeably. I see a general contractor as one who's going to purchase the home, renovate it, and then turn it over. A developer does the same thing, but a developer does things, and I'm not trying to lecture you, but I just see the developers doing things on a larger scale. So,
yeah.
But with that said, let me move.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I think that's a really good point. I'm using them both mainly because part of the vision I think is to the extent that there are contractors out there who are willing to do this. I think building capital around these Hartford Land Bank homes. My hope is to create a pipeline of contractors who can become developers over time and build real capital and real wealth off of these properties. And so I don't use them. I'm not, sort of flippant in using them together, but I really believe that a contractor who's got the skills can, with access to capital, become a developer, because I think there are contractors in the city who have all of the intelligence and skills and abilities of multi-million-dollar developers, but just don't have the initial access to capital and the ability to build out those skills into a sort of larger scale thing.
All right, and probably two more things. And then you said, and like I said, I'd like to meet with you at another time. I'm quite interested in this topic. You said that possibly a potential person could buy it and flip it, so that would, as an investment, which would not serve the purpose that you want, as to home ownership.
Yeah, I mean, this is.
I'm just saying that I wasn't trying to get next. I'm just saying this is. I'm just wanted to state that, because earlier you were talking about home ownership. But if ultimately, and it's your board or you decide that if I can purchase it as an investor and flip it, it could possibly be someone who would do it would not actually live there and could put tenants there, and that would defeat the purpose, your overall.
Yeah, my thought is that if we can raise the amount to create subsidies to make these investments really valuable, you can tie those subsidies to a requirement that you sell it to an owner occupant, or at least make every effort to sell it to an owner occupant after you develop it.
And probably my last point is that you are you going to be able to how far are you going to track contracting? Because you hire me and I'm a general contractor, of course, and then I have to bring in an electrician, I got to bring in a plumber, I have to bring in this and that. Are you going to monitor the whole process so that that individual, that minority contractor, because there are minority contractors who might not subscribe to what you're saying, and bring in all subcontractors who don't look like what you're doing? So is that gonna just go to the person who actually purchased it, or is that gonna also, you're gonna track the GC in his or her subcontracting to ensure that there's diversity inclusion in the whole contracting process?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. My hope is to, and I think it's an ongoing conversation, but my hope is to have a role of through some of those. So I don't want to speak specifically to the process, but I think that there are a couple ways in which you can ensure that that contractors who get these properties are required to look for work within our city.
All right. Well, thank you and congratulations on your appointment. And I will sometime follow up. I'd like to follow up and have that conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you. And I put my email and my cell phone number in the chat, so I'm happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next we have Colin. Colin, you have.
Hey, Colin.
You have.
How you doing, man? Hey, man, good to see you at that position. Just I know everybody don't know that you've been speaking for months now about when you was in a different position about what you want to do at Hartford. So I know you have great intentions, and what we've been speaking about, I know that we can definitely get a lot of stuff done. And I'm happy to see where you're at right now. So can't wait to speak to you.
I really appreciate that. And looking forward to our coffee and, to your advice and the advice of other people who've been down paths similar to this before. And so I recognize that there's a lot more wisdom in this group than I have myself. So I appreciate your advice, Colin, and other people in this group.
Thank you.
Okay, final question. Sherry, you have the floor. Sherry, you're muted if you're trying to talk. Unless you unintentionally raise your hand. Unmute yourself. There we go.
Okay, there. Okay. I have a question concerning sort of the same thing that Alvin mentioned earlier, concerning minority contractors and and ensuring that the individuals that that purchased a home stay in the home or stay in the home for 5 to 10 years. With that clause inside the contract, and making sure that minority contractors, if given the contract, making sure that they just don't sub the contract out to someone else. Mm-hmm. Okay, how? What tools are you going to use? And and I just need to find out from you. And this sounds like a personal question, but sure. Are you familiar with construction and what's involved in it?
Yeah, that's
and making sure. Handling contractors. Yeah,
and from a regulatory standpoint at the Department of Consumer Protection, we oversaw the licensing of all occupational trades. So contractors, electricians, plumbers, pipe fitters, sheet metal workers. So, it's a trade. They're a set of trades that I have familiarity with. But, look, I think that there are two really good tools to enforce some of these ideas, because I think for this to work out, there need to be subsidies on the construction end, and subsidies on the home ownership end, in order to make it affordable, in order to make it profitable to smaller scale contractors to be able to develop these properties, and then to make it affordable for homeowners in Hartford to purchase these properties. They require subsidies, and I think those subsidies should come with strings attached. On the home ownership end, there should be some strings attached on how long you occupy that property. And on the construction end, I think there should be strings attached on who you sell the property to, and who you're hiring to do the work. And so, I think that there are very easily built-in tools to make this work to begin with. I think you need subsidies, and those are really good tools then to encourage the long-term home ownership and the hiring of minority subs, and also selling to owner occupants.
All right. Okay, well, we're going to end it there, sir. And I thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us and being our first guest here on our inaugural broadcast.
It's a real honor, and thank you guys. I always enjoy being with the Alliance and all of the kind of thoughts and advice that people give in this group. It's such a thoughtful group, I think, and such a passionate group and group of folks who are really committed to the city. So I really appreciate it. And as I said, my email and personal cell phone number are in the chat, and I encourage you to reach out anytime you need it.
Okay. So our guest has been the CEO of the Hartford Land Bank. And if you missed any portion of the program, you can always watch it again on whatever platform you're watching it. And so with that, we thank you and hope that the information was useful. We look forward to your participation, those of you in the viewing audience, in the coming future. And You can find out more information about the African American Alliance at ghafricanamericanaLalliance.com. The chair will entertain a motion to go back to the regular agenda.
Mr.
So
President.
moved, Arjo.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. We are